All right, hi everybody. Welcome back to the Library of Alexandria. Today we're going to talk about Taipan, book 2 of the James Clavell's Asian Saga. And I forgot how much I love these books. But today, you may have seen discussion on Shogun prior, and now we are discussing Taipan, which takes place 240 years later or so. And I am joined by Read by Kyle and Josh from Red Fury Books. What up, guys? You introduce yourselves in your channel just in case. Everyone knows who y'all are, but go ahead anyway.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kyle from Read by Kyle. I read Shogun with these guys over the 3 months, and I really liked Shogun. Jimmy. I really liked Shogun, but I think dragging it out over 3 months did not really work for me. I kind of want to, in a couple of years, sit down and just read it straight through and really get it. But I did that with Taipan this month or last month. And I really liked Taipan. I think I liked it more than Shogun for that reason, but I think they're both really excellent books with a couple flaws.
Yeah. Josh?
Cool. Well, I'm Josh from Red Fury Books. I read Shogun last year, and it was one of my best books of the year, and just loved it. It's actually probably a top 10 all time for me. I mean, I adore that book. So I read Taipan this month, first time for both of those. And I won't say I liked it as much as Shogun, but I really, really liked it. And I'll definitely be reading all 6 of these Asian Saga books. I love the underlying themes that we'll talk about that kind of link them all together, even though they're different settings. And Clavell he makes a huge book just so fast paced, and just really enjoy them.
Yeah. I like, they're so different. I remembered why I liked Taipan so much while reading it, and they are very different. It's very different than Shogun. But I do like the fact that just like in Shogun, in Taipan, because for those of you who don't know, this takes place after or in the midst, really, of the first Opium War, where the British, they have discovered tea, and in order to get tea, China will only sell them tea with silver bullion. If you want more about this topic, I have a video on the history of the Poppy War Part 1, literally covers all this. But they can only get tea with silver bullion, and they start running low on silver bullion. So they're like, crap, how do we get more silver? Oh, wait, we have British India. Let's sell drugs. Let's sell opium from British India to China for silver bullion. And then we'll use that silver bullion to get more tea. And thus began, a big thing. And then China periodically says, no, stop. And then Britain says, well, we have boats with cannons and we will blow you up. So give it back. And it's a big to-do. And Britain, tiny Britain, brought kind of China to its, to capitulation in what became known as the Century of Humiliation for China. Where the West just ran roughshod over China, and China still is. This is has the roots of part of why China mistrusts the West now, is because of how the Europeans and then us treated them post Opium Wars. So this takes place right in the middle of the Opium Wars with these trading houses. The main one is Noble House, and that's what Taipan is. Taipan is the head of each trading house, is the Taipan. That's the Chinese word, or how the English pronounce the Chinese word. But the Taipan, capital Taipan, is Dirk Struan, who is the head of the Noble House, the number one trading company. And so I like how Clavell in this one and in Shogun, he drops you down in a time period. In Shogun, it's like a handful of months, right? It's like 6 months. All 1,200 pages take place over 6 months. In this one, it's a little longer. It's like a year and a half, maybe 2 years, but he just drops you down, and it's like, here's what it's like to live in this time period. And so he'll focus on stuff like, this is how the Chinese prepare tea. This is what they do to bathe. This is, what the ins and outs of, the trading cycles were. This is how they parceled out lots on Hong Kong. Oh, after the first Opium War, China, part of it was that China relinquished this island that no one cares about. It's just like mountainous island, Hong Kong, to the British. and the British want to use that as like a base, like to build it up as like a base for trade. So yeah, so I love all of the cultural aspects that he includes, not just in Shogun but in Taipan as well. And this was written before Shogun. This was his second book after King Rat, and then Shogun was third. So what were you guys' kind of thoughts, just generally non-spoiler, about Taipan? You can compare it to Shogun if you want. But yeah, Kyle, you go ahead and start.
Excellent sum up of the history. I think that you should always just do like sum ups of history.
Word.
So I took a couple Asian history courses, so I knew like the background of a lot of this stuff. Like I had to do like one of my final essay once was on like the shipping and like stuff from the British and the, you know, we focus on the Philippines and Thailand and stuff, but I had just read copious amounts of just, you know, opium smuggling. So I do not have like a fair grounding in the background. But I wasn't too familiar with specifically like the founding of Hong Kong and like, you know, the political machinations around that. So I really was interested in Shogun like kind of right away, or sorry, Taipan for that right away. And I like this. I think the reason I like this more than Shogun is that I didn't have any familiarity with the people they were talking about, because it took me a long time to get grounded in Shogun, because he's like, these are these people, but with the names changed so we don't get in trouble, which I didn't like at all. And so this, it was like I knew the political background, but not like the actual, like everything else was just fresh.
Yeah.
And the two like warring houses between like, you know, the Brocks and the Struans was just really engaging to me, and the plot was really good. And my only issue with this book is the same was one of the big issues I had with Shogun, which is that Clavell needed a better editor for dialogue. I think this is just going to be the bane of my existence for all 6 of these books, which is he physically cannot have a dude say a thing and then have him say another sentence and not have him say that same thing in that sentence. Like, he just can't do it. He would just spontaneously combust.
What do you mean?
I'm like, does everybody have to say by God? Like, he's like, by God, you'll do it. By God. And, oh, by God, no, never mind. And they say no, never mind every sentence. And I'm just like, we get it, man. Like, nobody talks this way. Nobody talk. And in Shogun, it was another one. I can't remember what it was now. I'd have to check my review. But he just like has these dialogue.
So sorry.
So sorry. Oh my God. And it just drives me crazy. But other than that very specific thing, like, I think I really enjoyed this book a lot.
So Clavell, I mean, there was a time, and I think we can all remember him, where dialect was big in books. Like, that has gone the way of the dodo for the most part, where there's like stuff isn't written heavily in dialect anymore. But to be fair, like all of those like zounds and, you know, God's wounds and by God, I mean, those were common expletives at the time. And the no, never mind, we talked about this right before. It's pidgin Chinese, where it's how the Chinese would communicate with the Europeans, because none of them spoke Chinese except for what is it? The German priest, father, was it Mouse? Yeah. And then someone else. Like, very few people actually spoke Chinese. And so that's just yeah. And the so sorry thing is just to show that the Japanese are not confrontational people, and you know,
it's fine.
Like,
it's just he just can't. He just
I
doesn't.
can see how it's like, even if it's realistic, it's still it's still annoying. I get it. And Brock's dialect is really difficult. Like, who says thou still? Thou bain't getting one over on me, Struan, or whatever. Like, what is bain't?
I'll also say, Alan and I both listened to the audiobook and had different narrators, but I think both of them did like inspired performances for the pidgin English. And Josh read this book physically like a champion. So he just has his own interpretation of how these words were working. But I honestly don't know if I could have gotten through the book if I had just read it physically. Like, it was just a lot.
I understand.
I don't know. I think it's easier to gloss. I think it's easier to gloss over those kinds of things when you are reading it, because you don't have to keep hearing it.
Yeah, but I
don't know.
I did read some physically, and I was like, no.
Yeah.
Maybe Kyle.
Oh, you probably have the narrator in your head.
I can't. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
It didn't bother me.
Yeah.
So, at least as far as the dialect's concerned, I always hate that in literature, and I'm glad it's kind of being phased out, because that happens a lot. I mean, Dickens writing in Cockney, or like Southern American authors writing, you know, how the the Southern draw sounds, and that always drives me up a wall in a book. So that was really one of the things I didn't like about this, is I hated the pidgin English. It drove me nuts every single time.
I can imagine.
So I didn't like that. But the one thing I liked, just going back to the historical thing, is the only thing that I knew going in is I kind of knew that this was kind of the height of the British Empire, at least like the naval empire being a world power. So I knew that aspect of it. And I knew that Hong Kong was formed around this time. I honestly didn't know that's what the book was going to be about. So that was kind of a pleasant surprise for me, seeing that aspect of it. But the things that I really liked about this and Shogun were those early stages, just kind of, like you mentioned, Alan, how you just get thrown into the action and you're learning through the characters how much is going on. I mean, it's more pronounced in Shogun because he's thrown into a prison and he has to learn from that perspective. But here as well, I just love that. One thing I've said on all of these, every time I talk about these books, is my favorite thing in life is to learn. Even though I'm a teacher, I teach, but I love to learn more than anything. And when I see characters learn, I love that. So I love that aspect of, I'm reading the book and I'm learning things about Chinese culture, mid-19th century, but I'm seeing the characters learn. I'm seeing their attitudes change, their eyes open. And that's what I love most about both of these books. And that's why I know that the whole series is a series for me, because really the cross-cultural, the cultural conflict and the cultural learning from one another is really what's at the heart of all of this. So that's the thing that I love most about both of these books.
For sure. And in this one, we've got Dirk is not the Blackthorn. Dirk already knows all of the customs and does things the Chinese way. It's why the people on his ships are the least sick. They are the least disease ridden, because he understands the Asian way of washing your hands. And
I love the recurring thing of Cullum just like not agree. He's just like, why would I take a shower? And Dirk is just like, you idiot, listen to me.
Yeah, that Cullum is our Blackthorn character. Yeah. Here. He's the one that is dropped into it and has to learn the way. And one of the biggest things that he has to learn is about face. And that's one of the things I love about like the culture clash in here, is that it's so weird because the Europeans don't understand face like really at all. But for the Europeans, if you make a deal, like your word is your bond. Meanwhile, for the Chinese, it's all about saving face. It's all about saving like reputation and how you're viewed, and avoiding shame, that kind of thing. But then they give their word, and they'll break it if it means saving face. Like whatever. Like, oh, I have to tell the British that I'll do this. Okay, and then they just don't do that thing. And the Brits are like, by God, I can't believe, like, I mean, we even have, what is it, Sculler or Scupper or Scuzzer?
I know who you're talking about, but yeah, Scragger.
Yeah.
Thank you. Who like loses his mind because he gave Struan his word on something, and then Wu Kwok, right? Wu Kwok, yeah, Wu Fong is the dad. Wu Kwok is the son. But yeah, I love the clash of cultures and how the Europeans are trying to take advantage of the Chinese, and the Chinese are trying to take advantage of the Europeans. And you've got even people who are allied to Struan and Noble House, people like Gordon Chen, who loves Struan and respects Struan more than anything, and yet is also, we're going to push out the British forever and like make sure the Europeans never come back to China. Like I always love explorations of loyalty, and the different like strands of loyalty in this. Just like in Shogun, where Mariko is both Japanese and Christian. Like, where does her ultimate loyalty go? We've got Gordon Chen, whose loyalty is to the Noble House, to Dirk Struan, but also to China. And, everyone kind of has those conflicting loyalties. And that's one of the things I really, really enjoy about Clavell's works thus far, at least.
And I love that kind of the duplicity with both Gordon Chen and Mei Mei. They kind of had both sides of their loyalty is not necessarily tested, but they were kind of working both sides of the equation. And I like that. But yeah, regarding the cross culture, I love that Clavell doesn't seem to ever like take a side of East versus West. He shows the different aspects of the two cultures and kind of lets the reader decide or the characters decide. And I think ultimately the message he's trying to bring is that both East and West can learn from each other and can take things away from one another that can improve themselves. You know, I think in this one,
hygiene, he takes a stand on hygiene.
Well, yeah, he does take a stand on hygiene, as he should. But I mean, that's one of the things that the West should learn from the East is, you know, the advances in medicine and science in both of these books were far more advanced in Japan and China. But then again, you know, I think one of the takeaways in this one that the Chinese needed to learn was kind of that individualism. And I think he kind of pushes that a little bit, but yeah, I like how he just kind of walks the line pretty well.
Oh yeah. Real quick, Kyle. Sorry. I just remember when he said medical, the cinchona bark was actually used to treat malaria. And we get like the quinine.
I looked that up. Yeah.
Like I looked it up too. Holy crap.
Yeah.
Like that was so cool. Like I didn't catch that the first time, or I didn't care enough the first time I read it. So I was like, we got actual malaria treatments from, you know, extract of the cinchona bark, which is awesome. Anyway, I was just really excited about that. Sorry, Kyle, go ahead.
Yeah, no, of course. What is it? Oh, I was gonna say, one thing that I think Shogun was much better at, and again, like it's a much bigger, more epic work. And it was later in his career, but I think you can see the Chinese aren't portrayed negatively in this by any stretch. Like I really like the cultural stuff, but I do think that we didn't get enough like full Chinese perspectives in this. Like if you think about like, you know, Shogun, a lot of that book is just fully embraced, like born, raised Japanese to the core. Whereas really we got Mei Mei, who like, I mean, she is Chinese, but she's very much like given to Struan as like a concubine and like is obviously attached to him. So she's going to have like a lot of like, she's trying to civilize the barbarian, which a lot of it happened like, you know, before the book started. And then you have Gordon Chen, who is more in line with the regular Chinese thinking of the time, but he is also only half Chinese. Like he's the illegitimate son. So it's still like he's influenced by his Western father. So I do think the book could have benefited from some more like straight Chinese, like if we maybe had like a representative of the Chinese government more like there was some, but I did notice like maybe just reading it on the hills of on the cusp of Shogun, where Shogun was just like really deep in the Japanese way of life. But yeah, I agree. I think that's the best thing that he does is that you read one of these books and when you leave it, you know about that time period. You know what he's trying to tell you. And yeah, like I'm a lot like Josh, where I really like to learn, and I really like historical fiction for teaching people that they are interested in history.
Yeah.
And I say that a lot because it's true. And I think a lot of times you read like a dry, like those opium essays reading about, you know, just rafts of people trying to smuggle opium into the Philippines. Not interesting. Yeah. Not good at all. But this book would get people really interested in it. So I just love that aspect of it.
Yeah, that's such a good point. Is you read like reading historical fiction, like Anitha with Augustus, or you like, or and the Cicero trilogy. You read about a period in like a fictionalized version of it, and that makes you interested enough to go look up nonfiction about it. That's like I freaking bought I bought a book. It's not in here. I bought a book on the Opium Wars after reading this, because I'm like, you know what? Like I want to read about like the actual people who were here involved in this. And there was actually a minister of plenipotentiary guy, just like what's his name, Longstaff, like freaking Longstaff, who is the most easily manipulated like person in Hong Kong. And
I don't remember who Longstaff is. You guys got me on this one.
He's the guy. He's the agent of the crown. That
okay, yeah.
And Struan has to suggest it to him, and he's like, oh yes, oh yeah, yes, what? Like let's do that. And then the second he thinks Struan's broke, all of a sudden he doesn't have time to meet him. Like that kind of character, you know exactly what kind of guy that guy is. Like just out of his element. And then he thinks that he's going to get the jump on the opium traders by learning how to grow tea. Yeah, okay, all right, Longstaff. But Like, I love that Clavell is able, like this, when I was reading this, I was like, this is where my love of mercantilism in books and warring trading houses came from. I had forgotten where I got it. Like, I thought I had it before Taipan. I'm like, no. This is the book that made me really interested in competing trading houses, because, you know, he has scenes where Dirk is, you know, like we see Dirk telling with Cullum watching, like he's telling, oh, go buy this because this thing that happened here, this storm, you know, created a shortage of this thing, so we're gonna buy, and they have to predict the market 6 months from now because they got to send everybody, you know, they got to send the thing home, hope it doesn't get destroyed. And I don't know why that should be interesting, but it's really interesting to me. And so he has a way of making, like, adding drama to that kind of stuff. Like, is Struan's ship going to sink? And the bullion, like, this is why I like naval fantasy. And I liked naval fantasy before people started, like, saying they like naval fantasy after everyone saying they hate it. Oh, like, well, I normally hate naval fantasy, but mad ship or whatever. I like it because you are never safe on a boat, ever. You always have that element of danger on a boat.
That's an interesting, I never thought of it that way, but you're definitely right.
Like, when Struan gets the bullion on the ship, I could not stop being anxious. I'm like, can we please get this bullion to port, please? And then when he pawns it off on Brock, and it's like, well, you're gonna get robbed, Brock. Sorry, bud. Like, it just creates this element of danger of like the problem's been solved. Or normally you think the problem's solved. He's got the money. Like, that's normally the problem. How do you get the money? Well, no, because how many like fantasy books do you read where when like that after you get the money, there's still a problem? No. Like, once you get the money, it's over.
Don't read KJ Parker, Alan.
What? I mean, I know. Like, but the thing is, these are real dangers. How are you going to get it from Macau to Hong Kong without getting jumped, Struan? And I just love that. I love that aspect, and because I don't think of that either. But yeah, thoughts on other parts of the plot besides that? I just really like that first section.
He's a very good thriller writer, despite this being such a big book. Because there's so many scenes that I think that was thrilling. But even, I mean, just the scene, the ball, you know, the dance, the ball, where all the background, you know, kind of maneuvering. I mean, I found that riveting, which seems like the strangest thing. In the middle of this big book, you have this big, you know, this big ball on the island, and there was so much going on in there and so much maneuvering. And I think it's also, that was the scene for me that showed why when it's done well, how that third person omniscient point of view can work really, really well, because you can just head hop so frequently, because there was so much going on in there. And I love scenes like that in books where there's just a big group of people and everyone has their kind of own motivations, and you're just wondering what is going to happen. And it just seems strange in the middle of this big kind of adventure type of historical novel that this little dance in the middle would be so memorable. But for me, it really was.
Yeah. And seeing who Struan picks, because I didn't predict it, but it's like, that is the only choice you could make. Like, the fact that he's created a dilemma that seems so incredibly low stakes. Who's the belle of the ball? Like, low, like, how could the stakes be any lower? Except that it's not, because of Face and everything else, all the different factions. Like, it's a huge deal who's going to be the belle of the ball. So you're absolutely right, Josh. Like, I love that scene. It's like a mini climax.
It really is.
One thing that I really liked about the book, and I don't think I realized until, like, I don't know, I was like 2/3 of the way through the book, that it wasn't going to be like, it was going to be, I don't know if he planned on writing like interconnected novels at the time that he wrote this. I would guess he probably didn't, but he was just like, it would be nice if I could. But like the coins, like, I feel like for sure the coins are going to be like a thing going forward. And I just thought, like, you know, because Dirk is trying to figure out where the coins are going to come from. He's like questioning May, and he's like, oh, well, this, like, you know, pirate lord has one, where the other one's going to come. And then I was like, we were really far into the book. And I was like, oh, you know what? I bet like this is going to be something that's carried forward into Gaijin and Noble House, and
Yeah.
they'll come back in that. And I'm like, I don't know how far ahead he was thinking, or if he just got into it and he realized, oh well, I'll just leave them open for like where they went. But man, I'm like, that made me interested in the series going forward, because I was like, oh well, okay, what is like Dirk and Cullum's great grandson, like who are they going to have to be beholden to, and why? Because of this
Yeah.
thing that their great grandfather agreed to do 200 years ago. I think that's super fascinating.
Oh yeah. I completely forgot about
Yeah,
those coins, but yeah.
I was really into them. And then also I loved all the stuff with the pirates. And then the guy, I'm forgetting names now because I did most of this book on audio,
It's
but
fine.
like the secondary pirate who's like actually British or English,
Yeah,
European at least.
that's
And
what
then
I'm talking about, Skagger or whatever. What's his name,
and then he
Josh?
Scragger, I think.
Scragger.
Scragger's such a
Yeah.
silly name. It
It
reminds
is.
me of a Pokemon. That's why I can't think of it. But he has his like two sons, and he like gets Dirk to take them and stuff. I loved all that stuff. I thought that was all great.
Yeah, and we still never figured out why Toffs. Like, he asks himself, like, one of the chapter breaks ends with, why Toffs? Like, why am I sending these kids to go get a British, like, why? And we never figured out. So maybe we will. I mean, we figure out what happens to Scragger. But like, I love that the fact that Quack like broke his, like made him a liar. Scragger's like, no, screw this guy. Like, screw this guy. So
I love now that you brought up the coins, I love the kind of the cultural theme behind that too, how the Chinese are always thinking in centuries.
Yes,
whereas
absolutely.
the Brits are thinking from like day to day. And
that's
a good point. I hadn't even thought about the coins going forward to the rest of the novels. So yeah, that's going to be interesting to see. I'm sure they'll come up. They have to.
Yeah, the coins apparently, because I've only read Gaijin and I don't remember, and I and that's the last one I've read. So I've only read these first three, and apparently the coins are the through line between the Noble House ones. But I have no idea when they come up, what they're getting used. I don't know if any get used in the intervening time, because it's 100 years. No, it's not. It's 20 years between Taipan and Gaijin. Yeah, because Gaijin, as I was telling Kyle before you got here, Josh, Gaijin is from Cullum's son. Like, he's the main character. Malcolm.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So, but yeah. Oh, I like, okay. So I love, just like in Shogun, I like Clavell's characters with the exception of one. Other than one, I thought they were all like really multifaceted. Like, I love the fact that Brock and Struan hate each other, but there are certain things they will and will not do, even if they have the chance to ruin each other. Like when Tess gets involved, like, I just love Brock's, how torn he is between his hatred of Struan and desire to crush the Noble House and his like actual love of his daughter. Because we read a lot of fantasy, and we have seen there are so many characters that like, this guy could, like, Brock could easily have been what we've seen in a million fantasy books before, where it's just like, okay, ruthless, we'll do whatever. Like, even Struan, who is the good guy, does some awful things, like, and ruins people's lives. You know what I mean? Like, because he has to. But Gorth is the worst. Gorth is awful.
Yes.
Like Gorth, like, I was okay with Gorth being terrible, but like, Clavell really made sure none of us felt bad about what happened to Gorth. Like he really had to make sure that we didn't give a crap about Gorth.
It really disappointed me. Like, I thought I was going to like Gorth because, when he kind of shows up, he's making good points. And I thought it was going to be like an inversion of what you expect, where he's like, why do we have to hate each other just because our dads did? Like, why don't we just not do this? Like, he was speaking very logically and like, even keeled. And I was like, yeah, man, future of the noble houses. And then I was like, oh man, you're not there, man.
Yeah. Well, I think Brock's son, Malcolm, the one that's still in England, the one that caused the run on Struan's bank, which, like, that's just brilliant. Like, you cause a run on like, and it's Rob's fault, because Rob put all their money in one bank, despite the fact, and I love that happens at the beginning, because that is such a good characterization of Rob and the relationship between Rob and Struan. like Rob is, he's got the chief administrator, but he still has to answer to Dirk. And the one time that Dirk gives into something Rob really wants to do, and it goes, it's a disaster. And I completely forgot what happened to Rob in this book.
Yeah,
like
it comes out of nowhere. Are we doing spoilers now?
Yeah, we're
I figured. I mean, like, he just like kind of goes there, and they're like, "Oh, by the way, Rob died," and I'm like, "What?" Like,
and Sarah, the fact that Sarah's just like, he's in there.
Yeah.
And I was like, did Rob kill himself? And then I'm like, no. And that's another thing that I like that Clavell does in this book. I don't necessarily like it because too many people I like die, but like there was a wave of malaria on on Hong Kong. Like there was, because no one knew that just standing water bred mosquitoes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so many people died. Like it just like wipes the slate clean. And when Rob bit it, I was just like, man, that poor guy. Like, I really liked Rob's character in this. Like he's just trying to do his best.
Yeah,
can't measure up to his
he was
brother.
a better person than Dirk, and he also seemed more aware of his limitations. Like, I mean, obviously, he makes a decision that is a really very bad decision. But like generally speaking, he's like, I shouldn't be Taipan. Like, this is
his
not
last
a good idea.
words. I never wanted to be Taipan. Oh,
yeah.
I will say though, real quick, Alan, when you talk about the malaria and how it like caused the wave in Fire and Blood, which I know that you're reading soon, and I'm very excited. I think you'll love it. There's like, it's a history, and there's like several times in that history where there were, and they've talked about it in the main series and in Duncan Egg and stuff, that there were plagues. But then when he's writing this stuff, he actually has to follow through with the fact that he said that there were these plagues. And so there's a couple moments where it's just like all of a sudden it's just like a page where he's just listing all the people that you've been following that have just been killed by this, and you're like, man, they just killed everybody. But like, then you get, and it's
that
like,
happens.
man, that's what happens. Like, it's
I'm
like
reading histories right now.
Political dichotomy changes
for sure. I mean, Cassandra dies of tuberculosis, and then his oldest son does 4 months later. So
all the deaths in this book, well, not all, Gorst, but I mean, most of the deaths in this book are very sad.
Yeah. What'd you think of Rob, Josh?
No, I think the same. I felt for him because he was just trying to, like you said, do the right thing. He was trying to be loyal to his brother, also trying to make amends after screwing up with all the money. But I like it. It made me think, just hearing you guys talk about Rob. I liked the complexity of a lot of the relationships in this book, because the two brothers, of course, are obvious, but even just, I mean, you think about Dirk and Brock, how they hate each other and like loathe each other. They won't cross certain lines, but then some scenes they'll have a drink together, and because they still have the thing in common that they're both, essentially pirates, and so they still have, they still have that in common, even though they hate each other and they want to put each other out of business and all of that. So I love that. And I love just thinking about Dirk in general, how the one scene he has by himself with Cullum, when he says, "You're the only person that I can trust." I mean, I think it shed a whole lot of light on him, even though he seems like this master manipulator, always 3 steps ahead of everything. But you could tell that he was almost in many, many ways just kind of isolated, because he could only trust his son. Yeah. I love that scene where he just finally,
after the land sale.
Yeah. And I liked how I didn't like Cullum a lot. Yeah. And that was intentional by Clavell, because of the conflict. But then by the end, you see that, like you said, in many ways, he's kind of the Blackthorn. You see that character grew a lot. And I thought him at the end, man, I love that character at the end.
Cullum, like I hated Cullum, the whole book. And just when I would start liking him, he would do something that would piss off Dirk and he'd make me mad. And then at the end, because again, I forgot how this went. So first of all, he sells Dirk's knoll, and you have no indication that Dirk had planned for this to start with. And I'm getting chills at how angry, like just how the narrator's reading it. I'm like, dude, you're going to get killed. you're gonna get killed. But it was the only thing they could do to again save face without like ruining themselves. And then at the end, after Dirk dies, and Cullum's just like, yeah, you're right, Brock. You're right, Mr. Brock. Like, I'll be the Taipan after you. And I'm like, dude, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? What is it that makes him change his mind right there at the end? What is it? Do y'all remember?
Know.
I don't remember at all.
It's right there at the end. He's like, wait a minute. No. Hold on.
I think he just realized he actually had learned all the lessons from his father and just finally realized that he could put it together and he could do it.
Yeah, Cullum actually, now that I didn't think about it at the time, but he really is the Blackthorn of this book. And in the same way, I really didn't like Blackthorn for a long period of Shogun, and he's like not my favorite character in that book at all. Like Toranaga and May are, but
I remember
by the end of the book, you're like, wow, I actually like he's like Clavell's really good at subtle character change where you don't really notice in the moment.
Yeah.
That a person's learning a lot, but then when it gets to like the end point, you're like, no, this person has come a really far way. Because the whole book, Dirk is trying to like, just like be a father TM where he's just like, when you're Taipan by God, you keen.
Yeah.
No, never mind. And then, by the end, he's actually kind of listening.
So it's Quantz. And I love the cyclical nature because remember when Dirk first got to Macau, Quantz is the one that found him after he passed out in the street, robbed after going to a Macau whorehouse. And Quantz is the one who was like, and that's why Struan has so much like tolerance for Aristotle.
I forgot about the whorehouse stuff.
Yeah. So Aristotle is the one who set Dirk aright and on the path to be the Taipan and master of Asia. And then it's Quantz that runs into Cullum where he's just like, what am I supposed to do? And he's like, hey, it's Joss, man. Like I was the one that found your father. Like I was the one that, told him. And he's like, you know what? I can do this. And so, he has a rebirth the same way Struan did. I forgot about that. Freaking Quantz. Because what is his purpose? But here's his purpose. His purpose is to kind of be a buoying force because everyone finds Aristotle amusing. Everyone likes him. No one wants to see him have to go home to his Wagnerian wife who like drains the life from him where he's like, hey, everyone, I'm very happy with my wife. Like he's almost in a different book, like the comical nature of Aristotle and his wife. But, I
actually totally, and this probably signifies how much I cared about this plot line, but I totally forgot there was a whole subplot. I don't even remember the characters' names. A brother that was in love with his sister secretly. Who was that again?
Gosh, freaking
Mary Sinclair.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mary Sinclair was okay, I remember the girl. And then and it was like he was her she was his ward, and he like secretly was in love with her, and he didn't want to get.
Had slept with her when she was young after their dad
died.
Oh my gosh,
man!
Like talk about changing opinion of Horatio like that.
Yeah.
Like
Horatio, that's who it was. Oh, didn't like him at all.
Oh my, he got what was coming to him. Like I am so glad he went wandering in the freaking monsoon or typhoon.
Typhoon, yeah.
He lost his mind.
Wow, I totally lost every moment of that until you started mentioning Aristotle, and I was thinking about more of the side characters.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's the thing is there's so much in this book. Like it's long, but I guess because Shogun is so much longer, it feels like Taipan is short, but it's not at all.
Yeah. What were your thoughts about some other side characters? There are so many. Like, did you have any thoughts on Mary Sinclair? Like, I like the fact that she owes a lot to Dirk. She's really Dirk's ward because Dirk is the one that threatened their dad and was like, hey, like I will kill you if you beat them again. Like seriously, cut that crap out. But I liked Mary and all of her. Too. I mean, it's one of these situations where not just like Kiriko from Shogun and Gyoko-sama, they are women in a male-dominated society doing the only thing they know how to do to get any agency. And like I mean, her plan was never going to work forever. Like,
Oh, that scene. I'm remembering so much more of this book now that I'm
yeah.
talking about it.
Which
The
scene?
scene with Dirk and Mei Mei, where Mei Mei she offends Dirk somehow, and then he's just like, no, like
Oh
it's fine.
no, that came rushing back to me, like
Oh,
that, and where she dressed up to be European, and
yeah. And then like this is just such the cultural clash in a moment where, you know, Dirk is like, no, like it's fine. Like he's actually in this moment, he's being like pretty kind and empathetic, and he's like, no, like it's fine. Like don't worry about it. And she's like, you have to punish me or else I'm gonna kill myself. Like
'cause of
I will not
face.
be able. Yeah, to save face.
Yeah,
And he's like,
yeah.
that's absurd. And then he actually has to beat her to make her feel better. And I'm just like, oh my god.
Yeah.
It's a terrible
Man, what
scene
a
to
what a
watch.
terrible scene.
Yeah.
Like it's just so cringy. Not terrible, like I mean, like it's a good
Yeah.
scene, but like it's very hard to read.
Yeah, it's horrific.
Yeah.
You got thoughts on that scene, Josh?
No, I mean, I agree. I mean, that was one of those like, wow, he had to do it, but wow. I mean, you don't want to watch it.
No,
But,
not at all.
Yeah, I mean, there's that relationship as well. I love them together, and it was just so. I mean, you see the cultural things where she brings him like a younger Chinese girl as like, here's another concubine for you. Here's your new mistress, and he's like, you know, he has to almost act like he slept with her or whatever, so that she wouldn't save face with, you know, that she would save face
Right,
with
yeah.
the
And then like wasn't it something I might be mixed up with Shogun, but isn't it like if people don't think that he slept with the concubine, that she'll have to kill herself?
Yeah, well, she will lose face. Yes,
she'll lose face.
That's
Yeah,
in both. That's in both.
Yeah,
of
okay.
them.
Yeah, I thought it was in both.
Yeah.
That's why I was getting it mixed up. But yeah. Yeah, it's very interesting and terrible, like the nature of that whole dynamic. With Mei Mei, like it took me a long time to realize I liked the two of them together because, and this is also like my cultural lens too, which is that like the idea of this like young girl getting not sold, but like basically like negotiated to be his mistress, and also like her dad being like teach him to be civilized, and then she's in this relationship like of her not her own accord, and so just like inherently I'm just biased to be like, okay, well I want Mei Mei out of this relationship. But then actually they are really good together, and like Dirk and her do care about each other. It's just that like the circumstances of the way that they had to get together was a bit like not orthodox for like a Western lens. But
yeah, and I like that Dirk, because I think Dirk really does love Mei Mei, and he is willing to he's very close to breaking convention, and he breaks with convention when he brings her when she's got malaria. He's like, no, she's coming here, and everyone, you know, that is bad for business. And so when Dirk makes a decision that's bad for business because it's bad for, you know, rep and all that stuff, like you can tell that he definitely cares deeply, and the massive amount, like the heaven and earth he tries to move to get that freaking cinchona bark, like man. He's like 20,000 taels or whatever of silver to get it, and then the father asks for nothing, and he's like, "You need to take something. Like, freaking take my money, please." Like Dirk can't handle, you know, owing somebody. He's the exact kind of person that doesn't want to owe. But yeah, the fact that he wants to marry her and has decided to do that and live, you know, just screw everybody on this island. They're going to live as husband and wife. And then, you know, then the typhoon gets them, which is sad, but you know, they die in each other's arms, which is touching. But
I liked it. Yeah, I liked it.
I
didn't like it, but I thought it was well done.
Yeah. And I like that Clavell, with both the malaria and the typhoon, shows that how little the machinations of mankind matter when it comes to Mother Nature. Like, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Like, oh, you had plans? Sorry, here's malaria. Oh, you had plans? Here's a freaking typhoon that, you know, levels Hong Kong, basically. But the ships are safe, and that's, you know, that's good, because that's you know, why Britain doesn't abandon the whole endeavor. Which Skinner, what do you think of the newspaper guy who does basically nothing for like 2/3 of the book, but then is weaponized there at the end, because like you were saying, Josh, like Brock and him will have a drink together, because at the end of the day, even though they hate each other, they hate losing the opportunity to continue being traitors. I will not use the word pirate. Continue being traitors. So like all the traitors hate each other or have this rivalry, but they band together when all of their livelihoods, their collective livelihoods, are threatened by the stupid English government and the East India Trading Company.
They just needed Keith Richards to come in with the code, you know?
No. They hate Cutler Beckett too. They don't like the East India Trading Company, who tries to freaking monopolize their crap.
Yeah. I thought about Pirates of the Caribbean several times during this book, is all I'm saying. Yeah. But no, I liked all that stuff. Yeah, I do like the code, the kind of like unwritten rules that these people have with each other, of like, you know, it's kind of like your family, where it's like, you know, you might have an issue with your family. You might be like, oh, you know, this person's an idiot. But if somebody else is like, that person's an idiot, I'm like, hey, no. Like, you know, like it's like that. It's like, we all hate each other. Like, I think this person's a fool, but I'm the person that's going to ruin this fool's life.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that's why Dirk would never let anybody go after Brock. He's like, no, I'll get Brock, like in my time. I'll freaking get Brock. But then you've got like Gorst taking a shot at him and hitting the Russian ambassador. Like that was another, like all the geopolitical threads, like America being in this. First of all, I had forgotten that America was involved. What were you gonna say, Josh? Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I like that part of it. And I don't know. I was thinking back about just a minute ago, and we were talking about how some of the secondary characters, they were kind of in and out. Like the one character, what was her name?
Siobhan.
So Siobhan was like the one, you know, she's the most beautiful, whatever, and she's going to be with the Taipan and everything. And then it seemed like she was the woman with all this control because she was the most beautiful and she had all these connections, and she was going to basically choose who she wanted to be with. And then when push came to shove, her family said, no, you're going to marry this guy so that you're going to be part of this merchant group. And it just kind of showed that, very much like Mary Sinclair and May, just the women in the story, they're only limited by what they're able to do with the societal norms of the time, which I found really interesting, because it seemed like for so long she had so much more, I guess, agency and so much more control over her life. And then you find out at the end, well, no, she didn't. She was just like the others.
Yeah, she's talked about for like half the book before we see her. I think the first time we see her is at the ball.
Yeah,
right?
at the ball. It's the first time she shows up.
I think so.
Unless there might have been like a brief thing, but I'm pretty sure she shows up at the ball for the first time.
Yeah, because they talk about Siobhan and how hot she is like the entire book, and they're making bets on if that's who Aristotle's painting, which it is. And then she is beholden to her uncle. Because her dad's the senator, right? Her dad is a senator, I think.
That's right. Yeah.
And then Struan even has, you know, he even considers marrying her to unite Cooper Tillman with Noble House. Like all the considerations, like it's just fascinating for me, because these guys, Struan and Brock, they are royalty in all but name. Like there's no difference between, you know, like the political machinations of royal families in, you know, books like that and what's happening here. Like they have to think of so many things, because everything is going to affect their fiefdom that they've carved out for themselves. And they have to think about, and this is what, you know, as if we're all students of history here, we see that if you don't take care of the next generation, it's going to fall apart. Like you have to ensure the longevity of your line and of your kingdom. And if that means merging with this other one like Cooper Tillman, or even, I mean, he even considered Brock. Liza was considering, do I marry Tess to Dirk or to Cullum? Because she wants them to stop fighting. And so I just love that, like, that it has that much weight as you know, dynasties do in you know, normal political fantasy machination things.
Yeah, I mean, I really liked all that stuff. Also, one thing we have not talked about at all, you just mentioned kind of the end there, is Tess and Cullum together. Like, what do we think about that? I personally like it wasn't my favorite part of the book. Like the pirate stuff is gonna, take over from the romance. But in terms of, 1960s romances, I thought it was like pretty good. Like I didn't find it very like objectionable. And I believed that, these two, like it was like a little Romeo and Juliet kind of thing going on there. And just like the position it put the dads in, I think was the most interesting part.
Yeah.
Where like, especially like Dirk really, wanted his son to be happy. And you could see there's a part of him that's like, this would be a good business decision down the line because then it would merge the two houses. But he just hates Brock. And he just like, he just can't get over. He's like, I recognize why this would be good, but also could we not do this?
Yeah.
And like, he has that scene where he gets together with Brock and he's just like, we'll let them sort it out and we won't interfere. But I still hate you.
Yeah, they promised not
but he
to.
Still had that. He still had that little kernel of control. I don't remember the exact detail with it, where he still gamed the situation a little bit better than Brock.
He had them. He let them elope.
That's what it was.
He put Cullum in charge of the ship. He's like, I want you and you alone to take this ship to Hong Kong ahead of me, and you have control of the ship except for ship matters like steering the ship. So you take Tess and go ahead of me.
I don't think I picked up on the fact that he was like now that you say that, it seems obvious, but I don't know.
I like that. I like that Dirk doesn't have anything against Liza and Tess. Like, he doesn't have anything against the Brocks. He has something against Tyler Brock. And it's easy to forget why, other than he's a business partner. He came up as a sailor on Brock's ship. And Brock
didn't he used to like beat him and stuff?
Yeah, Brock is quick to lash. We saw that. Like, Struan tries not to lash his guys, and Brock like lashed him and took pleasure in lashing him. And so when he deserted and got his own thing, he's like made it his life's mission to punish Brock. And thinking like, and then I forget that he doesn't actually do that. Like, he doesn't actually get the best of Brock and Sons. He dies.
Which is actually like a pretty ambitious ending to a book when you think about it.
Yeah.
That's just like the guy's like, I'm gonna do this, and then he just dies in a typhoon and the book's over.
Yeah, for sure.
But you get the little kernel of, oh, Cullum's going to be okay. He's going to be good at this.
Yeah.
How I left the book, have that feeling like,
I'm pretty excited
he's ready.
Yeah,
to see him in the next book. Like, I know it'll be focused on his son, but I mean, I don't know if he's still alive, but presumably he's still around in some capacity.
Yeah, it's 20 years later, so I think Cullum's probably. I mean, unless something got him. I mean, he wouldn't have.
I love that you don't remember.
I've no idea. No, none. I don't remember anything. Like, big scenes will come rushing back to me right as I get to them, but I have no idea, and it's gone from my brain. So I'm so excited to read it also.
And Gaijin's set in Japan, isn't it?
Yes, so we're going to deal now. We're going to learn about the Meiji Restoration and the end of the Tokugawa Shogunate, where the American ships came with their big old guns and threatened the Tokugawa shogun and forced him to open up Japan after having shut it down, except for that tiny Portuguese port at like Nagasaki, where they could only like they could. No, and then it got rid of the Portuguese because they rebelled. So it's the Dutch. Like, only the Dutch were allowed to trade, and there's that one port. So we'll learn all about Meiji and the kind of the death
Josh,
of the samurai.
have you watched The Last Samurai?
It's been a while, but yes.
Okay, so it's that era. Like, it's not going to be focusing on that story, but it'll be like roughly that time period.
Yeah, it's basically the republicanization of Japan, where they get the constitution, like they get the diet and the constitution that takes them from basically into the modern era. And I don't normally I actually hate the Meiji Restoration because it's the death of the samurai class. And they start wearing suits and stuff because they start dressing like the English. And it's just like, I don't like this for Japan, but I am eager to learn more about it, more than I can remember, and to see what happens within this this context, especially considering that someone in it is a descendant of the Tokugawa. That's how it ties in, or Toranaga. That's how it ties in with Shogun. And then we've got Malcolm Struan as the main character. I think he falls in love with a Japanese girl. I think that's how it's billed as like a romance.
But Gaijin was written before Shogun, I think.
Gaijin was the most recent one written. It was the last one written. It was written in the 90s.
What's sad about that, I was reading about it. So Gaijin was released almost exactly 30 years ago, like a couple days ago, actually. And I know that because it said June 1993, and I was born in June 1993. And I was like, what was the day? Is it exactly as old as me? But it's a little bit older. But he was actually going to do a sequel to Gaijin, and he was writing another book, and then he died. And I was like, that's very sad.
He died? I didn't know he was dead. I thought he was going to keep writing.
He died in 1994.
No. I didn't know that, Kyle.
Or 1996 or something. He died a long time ago, but yeah, like
that makes me sad.
Yeah.
Dang.
He was old.
So fun fact, my Shogun review, I had someone comment. That's one of the bigger videos on my channel is that review, actually, which is rare because single book reviews don't do well, but that one did.
Yeah.
Someone commented and said, yeah, Jimmy was my uncle. Clavell was his uncle. And
that's cool.
Yeah. So
Uncle Jimmy.
That's awesome.
Uncle Jimmy Clavell.
That is awesome. I'm definitely eager to see how those what before we end, in closing thoughts, like what other, did we miss any themes? Because I'm excited to see the more underlying themes that come into Gaijin, that I'm assuming we're still going to have cultural shock, and because the Americans certainly aren't going to be accustomed to Japanese culture, but it's not, I mean, it's not like Shogun, because I don't remember that at all. Any ideas about what the coins are gonna, like, what's gonna happen with the, I mean, there's no way to know. Like, who knows? Like,
I mean, we don't even know where three of them ended up. So, like, I don't know. Like, there could be like a descendant of a pirate, or like some piratey figure that has one of the coins.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's just no way to know.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting if it's only 20 years later, if some of the other characters like Gordon Chen, if he's has some influence in the book, if he's in there, or even just mention of the triad, I think they called it.
Yeah, the triads.
Yeah, Gordon Chen was still pretty
young.
Yeah,
that'll be interesting.
Yeah, I feel like Gordon.
Yeah, I mean, he seems younger than Cullum for sure.
Late 20s is kind of how I was, but I don't know the exact timeline. But I was picturing him as like late 20s, early 30s by the end of the book.
I was picturing Gordon a little younger, but Cullum, I was picturing Cullum kind of late 20s and Gordon
wasn't Gordon. Well, I guess Gordon was born after Cullum. Yeah, you might be right.
Yeah.
I was thinking he was born.
So I just Googled it. The only thing I saw, Gordon Chen's name is mentioned in Gaijin. So I think we're going to see some Gordon Chen, which pleases me too. I love. I wonder how high he's taken his underground triad revolution. In the 20 years, I bet he's like the complete master of Hong Kong at this point, at least of the underground.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Yeah,
I'm hopeful that Gaijin doesn't use the same fucking dang phrases as much. Alan, you don't understand. Alan, listen. Every single time I've ever spoken to you, I have to restrain myself from swearing every single time.
I mean, I don't care. I don't care unless it's on the live air.
I know. I apologize. I apologize.
All right, you hear that, YouTube? He apologized.
That was the time. It's an hour in. They'll never notice.
Yeah, that's probably true. I'm trying to see. Yeah. But do you guys know when abouts you're going to get to it? And do y'all want to talk about it, like when we finish it or whatever?
I'm down to talk about it.
I definitely want to talk about it.
I was going to do it when you
I have no timetable. I mean, I have it on the shelf. It's a chunker like Shogun. It's like almost 1,100 pages, the hardcover. So
yeah. So I will be reading it slowly. So y'all have plenty of time. I'm going to start next month and just read it slowly. So we've got plenty of time to read it.
December talk about it.
I mean, it's not going to be that long.
I know. I'm just kidding.
But I once I start it, I will get the audio and just be listening to it like but it's a 51-hour audiobook. So I mean, take 100 years. But yeah, I'm pumped. I am also eager because I remembered more about Taipan. I remember nothing about Gaijin. I don't remember a dang thing. Not a dang thing. I have no idea. I knew the main character's name was Malcolm, and that's it. So I'm hoping that Gaijin is really good also. And maybe after we read this Asian saga, I'm down to read the whole thing. I heard Whirlwind isn't good.
I'm not going to read Whirlwind. I'll read the other 5. I'm not going to read Whirlwind. I've heard no like convincing reviews as to why it's good, and it's also a time period that I'm not super interested in, and it's huge. So I'm like, I'll do the other 5 for sure.
I heard that also. So I'll see when I get there, but I'm definitely going to read King Rat and Noble House for sure. Yeah. So, all right, final thoughts on Taipan.
It's great. I love the cultural. For me, that's the underlying theme I think that all of these are going to have is what I love most. It's that cross-cultural conflicts and ultimate learning. And I just love that. It doesn't get old for me.
Yeah. Same. It's gonna be.
I agree. And just like that, one culture's way of doing things are not inherently better unless, taking a shower, but that's empirical. But, just like people learning how to deal with other people is always very interesting.
Yeah. Like he doesn't condemn the Chinese for not, when they, care more about face than their oath. And he doesn't say at the same time, doesn't condemn the Europeans for valuing, like he portrays both as like positive qualities of the different cultures, which I really like. He does the same thing in Shogun. We just don't start from a look at these barbarians perspective like we do in Shogun with, Blackthorn and Omi just like cutting people's heads off like left and right and stuff, and everyone committing seppuku I dropped this plate, I commit seppuku or whatever. So Kyle is right, it did not occur that often, but still. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me. Crowd, if you have not read Shogun, you should. Like, y'all should go learn something. Like, seriously, go read something and learn something instead of telling me all this other stuff I should read.
Another thing you should read. Josh, you're invited to this if you want, but I'm specifically asking Alan, because Alan always complains nobody invites him to buddy reads. Have you heard of The Last Samurai by Craig Shreve?
What?
The Last African Samurai or something like that? It's
The
coming
Last
out
African
right away.
Samurai. Yeah, Zara read it. Yeah.
You what?
Zara
read it. Okay. Do you want to read it?
I mean, sure, when it comes out. I don't know when, but I would definitely.
It's on NetGalley. Comes out in August, I think.
I surely can't read it before then. So, but I do want to read it. So you're welcome to read it without me, but I will read it. And talk to you about it.
I'm not going to read. Like, listen, unlike you, having the release date is more like a guideline than an actual law to me. Like, I'll read it when I get to it, but it's only 300 pages. That's why I asked.
Nice. I'm just loving historical fiction, so
yeah,
I am.
And that book deals a lot with Nobunaga, and man, we need more books about Nobunaga.
I agree. Josh, have you read any historical fiction recently other than Taipan?
Lonesome Dove.
How was that?
Different kind. Oh, it's amazing. It's my book of the year so far.
Really?
Everybody's loving Lonesome Dove.
I hear that too, and I can't bring myself to read it. Because I don't like cowboys.
I know, but nobody does.
Well, I've heard if you read. No, I've heard if you read one Western, this is the one. And I would say that. I mean, I haven't read a lot of Westerns, but it's really good. The characterization, it's actually two of my favorite things in fantasy in a Western. It's like a fellowship and a quest. And it's great. It's fantastic.
All right. I'm gonna try not to be all the people who like refuse to read these books because like I don't care about Hong Kong.
Yeah.
Dang it.
Well, the main thing I want you to read is a book about the Mongols. That's the number one. But then you can read Lonesome Dove.
Oh yeah. Let me look at Lonesome Dove. How long is Lonesome Dove?
It's long.
It's like 1,000 pages.
It's so long.
Yeah.
I'm supposed to read it this year. I was going to buddy read it with Sarah and somebody from her Discord. And the audiobook is like legitimately the worst audiobook I've heard in my entire life. Like I'm not it's really, really bad. And I was following along with the text and listening to the audiobook. And the audiobook narrator said the opposite thing. So like somebody was like, he said he didn't do that. And the audiobook said he did do that, which would be the exact opposite meaning. And I was like, this is a terrible audiobook. It sounds like it was made underwater in a submarine in the 1800s.
Well,
So I was like, I got to read this book at a different time. But
everyone
I do
keeps
need
talking about how good it is, and I just can't
Yeah.
accept that as fact. But I'll put it on my. I'm gonna click want to read. Sadly, it makes me sad that I just clicked want to read.
Also, everybody, this is my rabbit Aria. She was bothering me the whole time we were on, so that's why I'm petting her, because she gets mad.
Thank you so much for joining me, guys. If you're not in the chat, if you're not following, or anybody watching this later, if you're not following Kyle and Josh, please make sure you do. And we will be back eventually, and we'll discuss some Gaijin. So yeah, thank you guys so much for giving up some of your Tuesday evening. And all right, I'm going to end the broadcast now. Later, chat. Thank you for joining us. Hang on.